Hello and welcome to week 5 in social psych, and this is the chapter 8 is a really big deal for me. It's been a deep part of my developmental psych class is looking at theory of mind and the importance of this. I'm glad it has its own chapter in this particular course. And then in chapter 9, we're going to be looking at evolutionary theories in psychology. Now, theory of mind is a developmental stage which children, all of us, have gone through, where we become aware that there is I and there is you, and what's going on in my mind is not necessarily the same thing that's going on in your mind. That is a very, very critical stage in human development. It leads ultimately to empathy, perspective taking, some very, very important parts of our abilities as cognitive individuals, and in many cases, depending on where somebody's at on the spectrum, a lacking of theory of mind is one of the principal aspects of autism. So it's a very, very important part of our social world, but we talk about it in developmental psych, talk about it in biopsych, and here we are talking about it in social psych. Now, the discussion for this class is going to focus on perspective taking and you providing me with examples from your own life, behaviors that you've engaged that take into account perspective taking. Maybe if you're aware of young children and their development of theory of mind, to talk about when you notice that changed. One of the key places in which that does change is young children begin to lie. Up until then, they might fabricate stories, but they basically feel that people are following along with them. However, an individual starts to lie when they know if they can make you think a certain way, you will act in a way in accordance to that version of the story as opposed to the truth. So small children actually learn that. And then you can walk into a room, let's say, and something has happened, and they can say, I don't know what happened, and stuff. And they're like, they know exactly what happened, but they're trying to convince you that they don't know because they have theory of mind. It's a time to celebrate. As much as we don't like our kids lying, it actually does define a particular milestone in human development. Now, in the quiz for chapter 8, I'm asking you to think about an instance in which you've had to adjust your thinking because of your awareness of a different culture or norm. You went someplace, things were different, and you had to adjust, like on the fly, about what that meant and for you to change. We're going to have it's actually similar to the next quiz. This you're taking on and you're talking about primarily from an awareness of others being different than you, and then we're going to look at adaptation in chapter 9. In the assignment's kind of a quirky one. It's kind of looking for, something a little fun. But what I want you to do is write a short paper as outlined in the course book. Pick a conspiracy theory and pit that against data science. So I want you to pick any one of them. You can look them up, and then I want you to do research that would indicate here's what the conspiracy is, this is what data science is. Because in truth, when we are becoming scientists, that is actually a perspective. It can be one that we don't have on all the time. We can put on our scientist hat and perceive things from a scientific point of view. Now, our modern world has progressed the way it has because the majority of people have gone along with this particular view, and we have great inventions and great societies and whatnot, problems notwithstanding. But it is a perspective. So you might have an individual who does not have the scientific mindset, who believes a particular conspiracy theory, and others that have that perspective. So you're doing that sort of comparison. Now we move then into essentially the role that evolution has had on producing the social world in which we live in. Now we understand right from the get-go that the complexity of human society far outpaces any other animal on Earth. Yes, there are complex interactions between animals. There's a complex ecosystem, but it pales in comparison to the complexity of our society. So if we were going to take another lens, we're going to take those glasses, put them on, and say, I'm going to look at things from an evolutionary point of view. How could this have happened using the concepts of natural selection and evolution? So in the discussion, this is kind of fun, I want you to look at a modern behavior, whatever it is, and I want you to consider to do a thought experiment as to how those kinds of behaviors may have been part of an evolutionary advantage. The individuals who were able to do those things were more likely to survive. They were selected by the environment. So pick any human behavior. Really, I'm not going to do any example because I don't want anybody to do my example. I'll do one. Dancing. So we go to dances right now, and certainly there's a lot of social issues going on there. But why does dancing occur? What is the purpose of dancing? And what advantage would good dancers in the ancient world have over others? So you can kind of imagine that good dancers would be showing off their masculinity. Looking back then, men dancing, trying to attract the women, certainly not like it happens in junior high now, but men dancing and showing their vigorous ability may have placed them in a higher pecking order in order to pick mates. They may have been, their dancing ability may be related to their overall physical fitness and power and strength. It also releases hormones with the sweating and all that engage in sexual activity or promote sexual activity. So all of these things, they may have a connection way back. Individuals that were good dancers in the sense of that time, all the way to the day, that there's sort of connections there. That maybe still good dancers might be more attractive. There's still pheromones involved. We kind of cover them with cologne that actually enhances the pheromones. But, those kinds of things, a person who can move that well and physically fit might be attractive, those kinds of things. Making those connections between them. Now, none of you can use dancing because I've used that as an example. Now, in the quiz, I told you the quiz in this chapter is similar to the quiz in Chapter 8. In Chapter 8, how did you adjust to a new cultural norm or cultural experience? In this one, I'm looking at psychological adaptation. That is adaptation that can happen within somebody's lifespan. It's what we refer to as ontogenetic experiences. Those are experiences that we have within a lifespan that may contribute to longer-term evolutionary outcomes. Evolution is slow. So, the good dancers, physically fit and all that, that's probably a slow process. What I'm asking for here is circumstances under which you adapted to the immediate situation in order to survive that particular circumstance. A great example, of course, is how did we adapt our behaviors in result of the pandemic? Doesn't have to be that one. I mean, maybe some of us are getting tired of pandemic stories, but we all have those. We have those ways in which we changed our lives, the way we operate, the way we think, the way we do our jobs, the way we interact with friends. We adapted, and our ability to adapt, the capacity that we have to adapt, was essential for our success, our ability to make it through. And for some of you, and in certain, maybe for all of us in a way, there's ways that we couldn't adapt and we ended up harmed by the pandemic. I lost track of certain friends because I wasn't able to see them face to face or something like that. And so maybe examples of when you've successfully adapted, and maybe some examples of when I wasn't able to adapt to that and I was unsuccessful. And I'm hoping things go back to the way they were so I can engage in that again, or I lost an opportunity and I wasn't flexible enough to be able to overcome that. But it doesn't have to be about the pandemic. It can be similar to the quiz before, I could write an answer to both of those questions relating to stories about when I lived in Guam. When I was in junior high, I moved to Guam, and there was an immediate culture shock, but then there was lots of adaptations that I had to make in terms of seeing the world, a very different place at the same time while I'm undergoing developmental aspects of what happens to a brain during junior high when you're at that age. So it was kind of a wild time developmentally for me. And I could actually use stories from that same place to describe these two questions. So, Chapter 8, Theory of Mind. Chapter 9, Evolutionary Theories in Psychology. You have 2 discussions, 2 quizzes, and an assignment. Go do it. Get her done, as they say. So I'm look forward to these discussions. I think they're going to be really cool. I really look forward to some of these quizzes and the assignment. So I will see you then, and have a great week.